And now presenting the greatest dynamic duel of all time, Emperor Jonwayne Frankenstein and Batman. Na 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 Batman, Batman. Na 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 Emperor Jonwayne and Batman. Na 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 Emperor Jonwayne is God. Na 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 Batman and Emperor Jonwayne. Oh yeah. Greetings, boys and girls. It is me, your good friend, Emperor Jonwayne Frankenstein. And today, I'm going to be discussing the new animated series, Batman the Caped Crusauder, for which there's a lot of controversy out there. Now, a lot of people are just watching it and thinking it's great. For those who don't know, it's the newest Batman animated series, currently available on Prime Video. It takes place in the 1940s, and it's extra gritty and extremely realistic. The grittiest and most realistic version of Batman ever made, to be quite frankly and quite honest. Now, being a new Batman series, it takes some liberties. And there's a lot of people who are having problems with that and calling it a bunch of woke garbage and other such things. Now, among them, the most notorious. Oh, before we get into that, I'm, of course, Emperor Jonwayne Frankenstein, the greatest anti-villain of all time, the lover of comics and science fiction and horror and classic and cult movies, the man who's busy haunting Wisconsin, in particular Oshkosh, Wisconsin, that loves cheese and hence lives in the cheese capital of the world, and personally loves being an American citizen here in the United States, even though the world is going bat guano crazy. I have always loved Batman. I have been a big fan of Batman. Now, I think that the Batman animated series was one of the greatest versions of Batman ever. And Batman the Brave and Bold was the next greatest Batman version ever. See, my opinion is there are two versions of Batman that exists. One is the Batman in the DC universe. That's the one that's the leader of the Justice League and deals with all sorts of superpowered villains and deals with other superheroes. The other is the Batman of the Gotham universe, the one that lives in Gotham and is in this dark, gritty streets, the one that appears in most of the movies. And of course, I think Batman the Animated Series was the best version thus far of that version of Batman, whereas Batman the Brave and Bold animated series was the best version of the Batman for the DC universe. Now there's a new one that came out, Batman the Caped Crusauder. Like I said, it takes place in the 1940s, and it's much more realistic and grittier than any version before. They actually shoot people. People occasionally get hit with guns and die. Even Batman gets beat up and hit sometimes. He's not infallible and indestructible. The technology actually stays consistent with the 1940s. It's, I think, a really great show. But sadly, there's certain people that try to complain about anything. Now, I personally am not a big fan of cancel and woke culture, but I'm just as big a not a fan of the exact opposite, where we have these people that claim everything is woke just so they can hate on it for publicity. And of course, well, the number one purveyor of this would be Dr. Gloom Cluck, another fellow YouTuber that goes around pretending like he's the greatest villain of all time, living in the center of the earth or something. He wears a plastic milk jug for a helmet, and anything that's created, he says you should hate and tries to guilt you into hating, claiming it's all a bunch of woke nonsense, blah, 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 blah. And he just does it to get lots of views because there's a lot of people that will click anything that says it's woke. And he always tries to claim you should not watch this stuff and you should hate everything and everyone and everything is all woke and all that. And he always claims that he has inside sources that says this, that, and the other thing that he predicts, but it never, ever comes true. Of course, Dr. Gloom Cluck isn't the only person like that. There's a lot of other too, like Clownfish, just for example. I mean, some of these people at least have legitimate information and don't always go around claiming everything is woke. But a lot of times they do, because people click on it and people will watch it for that. Now, I've watched the entire Batman the Caped Crusader, and I will discuss all the alleged issues of why it's supposed to be woke nonsense and what I believe is the truth. You are entitled to any opinion you want. This is my opinion based on my observations. And while I think my opinion and my observations are impeccable, as is my taste, you are welcome to disagree with me. And if you want, we can discuss it like civilized people. And if you don't want to, and you just want to go and insult me, go right ahead. Because the more comments I get, whether good or bad, the more YouTube will recognize my video and recommend it to other people. So in any case, the Caped Crusader. The number one complaint people have, where they say it's woke nonsense, is they made a female version of the Penguin. Now, the Penguin is my favorite Batman villain. You might be surprised, based on my choice of attire, that I love the Penguin's look and outfit. Now, some people are claiming that this Penguin is transgender, and that is a lie. A flat-out lie created by people looking for clickbaits. This Penguin is a pure woman, and she's not even a lesbian. She flirts clearly with men. It is interesting to note that the Penguin that we're used to is a small man that overcompensates by being vicious and ruthless, whereas this version of the Penguin is an extremely large woman that wants to be a cabaret singer, a showgirl, but because of her unusual appearance, doesn't really get to pull that off. So she makes up for it by being a vicious psychopath and a crime lord and criminal. Now, she refers to herself as mother and mama all the time, as does all of her henchmen. She holds police balls where she gets to perform, and everyone has to handle it because it's a charity. Meanwhile, she's trying to destroy her arch rival, Rupert Thorne, by blowing up his buildings with a giant cannon cleverly disguised as an umbrella. Now, my opinion is this character's actually pretty interesting and pretty cool. I enjoyed it. I do not consider it to be the Penguin, just like in the Tim Burton Batman Returns. I loved Danny DeVito's character, but that also was not the classic Penguin. It was, well, something that used the Penguin name that was way different. Now, this character, I feel what they should have done is just created the new crime boss, that they called Mother or Mama, and they could have used the same personality, and it would have been great. And then they could have brought the Penguin back later. But it didn't ruin it for me. I liked the character, and they did keep the Penguin motif outside of that. I mean, she has a yacht called the Iceberg Lounge. She uses umbrellas as weapons. She wears the top hat and the classic suit. You know, there's nothing particularly woke about it. They just decided to make a female version of the Penguin. And, you know, there's a lot of times they make female versions of other characters and people like them. In fact, a lot of times they look for them on Rule 34 or other websites. So don't you go complaining about one character being made a female. That alone does not make a thing woke whatsoever. Now, the next thing people complain about is the race swapping of certain characters and perhaps a little more representation of certain races. In particular, well, for example, Commissioner Gordon is black or African American, and there's a lot of black people running around in Gotham. Now, the truth is that Gotham is DC's equivalent of the ghettos of New York City, probably Harlem. You know, that's a simple fact. That's where Gotham's supposed to be. So, if anything, most other versions of Batman, including the beloved Batman animated series, had an underrepresentation of the percentage of people that might be of that specific ethnic background. So I don't consider this to be woke. I consider this to be more accurate. I mean, you're literally in the ghettos of New York City. Yes, there are more people of color in such a location than there would be in the rich upper class parts of America. So no, this does not, in my opinion, make it woke. It just makes it slightly more realistic. The next thing people complain about is Fat Alfred. Like, you can't, like, half the people in America aren't overweight. Well, this is another sense of nonsense that's based off ignorance of the classic comic book. Alfred actually was originally portrayed as overweight, and he had several other images as well. So, since they're trying to go back to the original version of Batman, this is not particularly surprising. Now, I would say it was during the 1960s Batman series that Alfred got locked in as being skinny because that was very popular, and that became the version of Batman everyone followed for like 40 years until Tim Burton came around and made the new Batman movie. Catwoman in this one is interesting. She's still an attractive high socialite, but in this one she lost all of her money, and she's literally become a crazy Catwoman that has like dozens and dozens of pet cats. Now, having lost all of her money and squandered it, she tries to steal money to get back into living in high society. Nothing wrong with that version, and she actually looks a lot like the classic version of Catwoman. Nothing wrong there. Now, another thing people complain about is the new Harley Quinn. First of all, they don't like that she's Asian, an Asian American, and they don't necessarily like that she's actually intelligent. I thought this was great. I mean, it made a version of Harley Quinn that stands on its own, that isn't dependent on the Joker. And this version of Harley Quinn, spoilers! This version of Harley Quinn is a psychiatrist in Arkham that was trained by Professor Crane, who, if you know Batman lore, eventually becomes the Scarecrow. Now, she uses her psychological skills to drive people insane, to make new supervillains to try to lure Batman out. In that fact, she dresses herself up like Harley Quinn and assumes a supervillain identity as part of a trap to lure Batman out after the police have her profile him. It's kind of interesting, and it's kind of cool that she's actually creating a bunch of lesser-known Batman villains, like, for example, King Tut. It was really interesting to have King Tut make an appearance in the series when you wouldn't expect it. So, now this version of Harley Quinn flat out likes women. So she's either a lesbian or bisexual. And some of you may say, oh my God, that's woke! Well, bull honky on that. Because we all know that all you fanboys loved and were shipping Harley Quinn with Poison Ivy for years before DC made it official and made them an official couple. And if you could all handle Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn being a couple today, there's no reason why the 1940s Harley Quinn couldn't be into women. This does not make it woke any more than the overweight Alfred or any of this other nonsense you people are talking about. Now, the Rogues Gallery was very interesting and entertaining, and it had an interesting take on them. I mean, we got to see Two-Face, Gentleman Ghost, a version of Clayface that combined both the modern superpowered version of Clayface plus the original depiction of him in the comic books. Back then he didn't have superpowers, but they actually took his original story and modified it and did a great job. Renee Montagne is a recurring character, as is Harley Bullock. Then you have some other unusual characters that make appearances like Gentleman Ghost, Natalia Knight, and Onomatopoeia. Two-Face is probably the biggest supervillain in this one. All of them, they did a pretty good job with. They were interesting and fun to watch. Unfortunately, most of them seem to have been set up to be one-shots. It doesn't look like reoccurring characters is going to be a strong point of this series. Then again, the first season only has 10 episodes. So if you only have 10 episodes a season, with all the Batman villains to go through, that's a lot of episodes without having to have anyone repeat themselves. But I'll be honest, a lot of the fun of Batman is seeing your favorite villains come back time and time again. So I hope we get to see the Penguin again. I hope we get to see all these guys again. I hope we get to see them grow and evolve. And I hope we get to see a lot more episodes. And hopefully we will. as long as this show doesn't get canceled by reverse cancel culture. These idiots that go make crap up for likes and stuff that say everything is woke garbage when clearly it's not. I gotta say, I actually loved Batman the Caped Crusauder, and I am strongly against the woke culture and the cancel culture when they are wrong. Just like I'm strongly against the anti woke and anti culture cancel culture when they are wrong. And those people that are telling you this thing is a bunch of woke nonsense are liars. They are lying liars that are lying to get you to click on the stuff without actually watching it them yourself. So my opinion is watch the series for yourself and decide if you like it. If you like a dark, gritty, realistic version of Batman, this is probably the Batman for you. If you like it to be a little more fun and exciting and, unrealistic and campy, this might not be your thing. But you should watch it and judge for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Doomclock's word for it. Don't take anyone's word for it. Because you are the one that would know what you like and what you don't like. You can watch the first episode, and if you're not sure, watch the second. By then, you might know if you want to watch it all or not. There's only 10 episodes, so there's plenty of time to make up your mind for yourself. After all, that's what everyone should do. If you like Batman, give it a try, give it a chance, and decide whether it's for you or not. If you don't like Batman, well, then don't watch it. Unless you're looking for something gritty, realistic, animated series. It's that simple. Until next time, this is Emperor Jonwayne Frankenstein bidding you a humble adieu. We will see you next